Hello there. Well, the joint's really jumping in there, you know. Not at all surprising, because this is the village of Tempo in County Fermanagh. It's well named because it has a long playing tradition of music, of choirs and bands and groups and solo voices. The question is, in a mixed community as Tempo's is, does this lead to social harmony? Well, we'll see. Where better to start than in Milltown Manor, which isn't a manor at all. Come with me. Actually, the name Tempo has nothing at all to do with music. In fact, it's Irish for the turning, and I'm told it probably comes from the meandering twists of the River Tempo, on whose banks the village grew, just 9 miles from Enniskillen. It sprang into being some 300 years ago when the Maguire family, then the owners of Tempo Manor, built a mill beside the river. Not surprisingly, the name they first thought of for the village was Milltown. Walter Brady is a native of Tempo, a retired civil engineer with a fund of knowledge about the village and its immediate surroundings.
Well, as you see, it's really on the side of a hill, although it's in a little valley. It's mainly on the side of the hill facing us here, and it was often called hilly or tumulated in the old guidebooks, all these nice mounds and all. And of course there's a lot of prehistory around the village also. On the way to Enniskillen, there's quite a lot of little forts and duns and even dolmens and prehistoric ruins. It's quite famous for that.
Walter, that's a terrific size of a stone to find on a busy roadside. How much do you know about its history?
Well, I have always assumed that this huge boulder that you see here was left at the disappearance of the Ice Age, perhaps 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. And this top stone was added in the last 100 years. But this whole area, we're in the townland of Doon now, and Doon of course means a fort, but there are a number of forts and raths dotted all around the countryside in this townland. In fact, there's one on the hill in the distance there called Drumkeenra. Drumkeenra in Gaelic means the ridge of the beautiful fort, beautiful rath rather. So we have quite a number of prehistoric remains in this area.
Beautiful Tempo Manor and its estate nudges the fringes of the village. This grand old residence was started in the early 1700s and became the property of the Langham family at the turn of the century. A couple of years ago, John Langham inherited it from his grandmother, And now he and his wife Sarah have set about the mammoth task of renovating and improving the manor with an eye to giving tourists not to the manor born a taste of stylish country living.
When we moved into the house, really it was a bit like a museum. It had been kept in time for quite some time. And it had a lot of dry rot, so it was at a situation which either I had to change it and make it into a modern house, or it's not modern house, but to make it more comfortable and change a lot of the character in the house and repair the dry rot, or maybe try and get round it. But anyway, I chose to change the whole thing to make it a bit more comfortable.
And how are you going to make it pay?
Hoping paying guests, shooting guests, parties coming to stay, and fishing parties. And we also went to Hidden Island, and generally doing that sort of thing. We might open the gardens to the public, but I don't know, I'm still looking for good ideas.
The Langhams have found that visitors from mainland Europe are particularly keen to enjoy the manor's hunting, shooting and fishing. John rolls up his sleeves and tackles the considerable problems of maintaining the fabric of the house, while Sarah has turned her hand and taste to redecorating and furnishing it in the hope that the paying guest idea will pay off. It's one thing to inherit a place like this, but it's quite another to take on what you've taken on, marrying into it. How did you feel about that?
Well, I didn't think about it. I just got on with it. Well, I'm lucky I do enjoy it. And I had a sort of empty palette to sort of paint on, so I just carried on. And John's brilliant with his hands, and he can make anything, do anything, any wire or anything. And so I just say, oh, I'd like lights there, and they sort of happen. And I can choose any colour I like, and he says, that's lovely, you know. So he's excellent. He's got
You
brilliant
weren't
taste.
born in these parts, though, were you?
No, I'm from Carlow, down south.
How did you
South
feel
Wales.
about coming to Northern Ireland?
Well, I didn't think about it at the time, but before I'd met John, I wouldn't have come here for all tea in China. I was one of those misinformed, or I had sort of negative thoughts on Northern Ireland. But I wouldn't live anywhere else now, because I've got the best of both worlds.
Tempo Village has a great tradition of making its own entertainment, and it also has a link with one of the legendary names in Irish music, the blind 18th century harpist Turlough O'Carolan. He once visited Tempo Manor and played for the original owners, the Maguires. The story of O'Carolan and other threads of folklore are all part of Tempo's rich canvas to Johnny McKegney. He is a grocer and undertaker, but his passionate interest is local history.
He actually married a Tempo girl, a Mary Maguire from a lovely town land of Letterbailey. And he travelled around Ireland visiting all the big houses playing his harp.
Well, that's not exactly a local hero, but the hero of a local wife.
Correct, yes. He was, we still look back and enjoy his music, and it's very famous now.
How do you get the young people interested in this? Because it's obviously them that keep it going.
It really is a great effort on the part of the teachers and the parents, and of course the children who take part. But the parents must be congratulated for sending the children out both to take part in the traditional music and the marching bands.
In Tempo, music matters to everyone, and even the young ones get involved at an early age. At Tempo-controlled primary school, the headmistress, Hazel Spears, is in no doubt as to the benefits of a musical training.
Well, like the village, the school has a very strong music tradition, and we keep that running through all our subject areas and every other activity that we have in school. We have 4 children who belong to local silver bands, and they take part in morning assembly, in Christmas and Easter performances, and any other activity we have.
about the communities mixing together? It obviously starts with the school children themselves. How much of that happens here in this very mixed community?
Well, both schools, both St Mary's and Temple Control School, have been involved in visits, outdoor visits together. We've gone swimming together, and we do get on very well together.
Do you see that as something that's really essential to the future of the community?
Yes, I do see it as very essential. When children leave primary school, they go to grammar and secondary schools, and they must be seen to mix and get on with other pupils of different beliefs and different ways of life.
Just across the road from the controlled primary school are the playing fields of St Mary's Catholic Primary School. Different games, different traditions.
I belong to a generation which I was a young boy in Tempo in the middle 50s, and around that time there was it was the last of a certain type of living, old-time fairs, that kind of thing. All that is now gone. So the Tempo which I grew up in 30, 40 years ago is totally different from the Tempo of 1993.
And what of the children here as a prospect to look forward to?
They're really a prospect I would hope that over the next 4 or 5 years that inside this school, the schools are put in this school is the level to receive a top-class education. Major benefit which I will see the next 4 or 5 years from. Thereafter, it basically will be in their own hands. One would like to be optimistic, but at the same time one would have to be honest and say that a more pessimistic approach would have to be taken about it. I would unfortunately envisage that inside 10 years quite a number of the children in this particular area would do as quite a number of their brothers and sisters have done over the last 20 and 30 years, have emigrated to all parts of the world.
I went back many times, often 3 times a week, with a hand in me Rosie, my intention to seek. When I asked her the question, would she marry me? Ah, Johnny, dear Johnny, I'd gladly wed thee. The wedding was held on a morning in May. It just happened to be the Tempo Fair Day. Our life has been long and our troubles been few. Now there's Johnny and Donny and Ellen and Hugh. But the darling of all is a wee girl called Claire. She's the spitter for Mommy I met at the fair.
Although a local bard of Tempo, Pat McNulty wasn't born in the village. He inherited a farm nearby and married a Tempo girl. 5 years ago, he started writing poetry about the village and its characters.
I basically fit out the story in my head first to get the whole story based in my head, and then I wrote the lines and puts it to rhyme then.
Do you dash up from the bottom of a field someday and think, I must get this down before it goes out of my head?
No, I can pen it in well in my head, but now of late I have started to come across a good line. It's possible there when I'd be doing a poem now, I'd write the last verse first, start at the end and work to the beginning.
That's a good way of doing it. Has any of it been published?
Yes, it's in the book To Taste the Tempo. That has been in it, and I have been twice reading poetry in the Ardone Theatre. and on several other places I've been invited to.
And they've been set to music, I believe.
Yes, I've got into the songwriting. I've written, I suppose, in all I've written half a dozen songs. And the highlight of the whole career was writing the song Beautiful Sligo for a competition in Sligo for Patricia Rogers, singer out few miles outside town. And, well, I hunted with her grandfather way back 40 years ago, and little did I know then that I'd be writing a song and going to Sligo and hitting the high spot with it. In 40 years after it, it just happened twice. Girls going for one for the Rose of Tralee and another for the Wild Rose of Hamilton, I think they call it, competition, and came out and their poems. Often want to ring up on the phone and they'll explain something to me there that they want a poem for such a thing, and they give me a bit of data. And even there was a doctor retiring in there in the hospital, a gynecologist, and there was a lady phoned me and gave me a lot of data. Well, now it was the toughest assignment yet. I wasn't well up on that side of life.
That's amazing. This has to be a first.
Yeah.
What would you really, if somebody gave you a commission now, what would you really like to write about most?
I mostly write about sort of emigration poems, and even in the songs there, it's about people away, loving to come home and things like that.
Why is that?
I don't know why it is. I suppose listening all my life, like I've been listening to the way back, we had one of the old gramophones that you wound up and all, and there was a terrible lot of emigration songs about one's away and coming back home and they're longing to get home and all. And I suppose it would be sort of that. I suppose it's still dingling in the brain.
Have you ever been away from home?
I never was away from home at all, but I still go for these emigration songs. There's the parting ones and then the coming home ones and things like that.
But you've no idea what it is they really feel. You're just guessing.
I'm just guessing. It's guesswork. Well, it goes down all right. I must be guessing right.
There were tears in my eyes when I left you. My friends stood and waved me goodbye. My heart, it was filled up with sorrow as my plane made its way across the sky. To the great USA I was going. My life, it would not be the same, but with some newfound friends and a good job, 'twould help me to bear with the pain. Fermanagh, Fermanagh, I love you. 'Tis with pride your name I recall when I think of the days of my childhood. To me, you're the best place of all.
George White is chairman of Tempo Silver Band, as well as being chairman and founding member of the local development association. His day job is an electrical contractor, and it was this that sparked off the idea that a few local shop owners should club together to provide Christmas lighting for the village. Since then, their association has gone from strength to strength and got other schemes going, such as putting street lighting on the outskirts of the village.
We in the Development Association have recently purchased a piece of land which the Tempo River runs through, just right adjacent to the main street, and we're just in the process of completing that. And to give you an idea of how the people support things like this, we in the Development Association, there was 12 at the meeting who decided to buy the field, and we all put in voluntary subscriptions into a fund to purchase the field, i.e. to pay a deposit. And now we have to complete the deal at the end of the month, and we are already getting subscriptions even in from people throughout the community. We may have to borrow some money, but we hope to get it funded from various trusts, what have you. And the field, we hope to put a building on it at a later stage. I'm just cannot say at the moment what all we intend to do, because initially to purchase it has been a very big achievement for the association. It's something we spent £20,000 on, and for a voluntary grouping, it's a big undertaking.
The plan is that the new building should house a small museum of artefacts to bring to life the tempo of bygone days. But more than this heritage centre idea, the plan is to provide a real focus for the village itself to come together socially.
Tempo people get on very, very well. I don't think that people in Tempo want any trouble within the area, and to the best of my knowledge, wouldn't support anybody that would be going to cause any trouble. Therefore, I think that's why the people get on so well.
Are they a lively bunch?
Yeah, I would say Tempo is lively, yes. It's by no means a dead village, no.
Tempo Silver Band was formed over 100 years ago. Sam Beattie, who plays solo cornet, has been in it longer than anyone else. He fondly remembers the pleasure he's had both as a bandsman and a man of Tempo.
Well, I always looked on a band as a great pastime. And that's the reason I would always encourage any young person that they're interested in music to come along. There's nothing as good, in my opinion, as to see a group of people sitting in a band room learning silver band music.
There's talk of reviving the fair here in Tempo. That would obviously be a big thing for the band, wouldn't it?
It would,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I can remember the fair days in Tempo very well.
Tell me about them.
Tempo Fair Day was always held on the 28th of every month. And it was a great day not only for the local farmers, but it was a great day as outings for traders in the town, and people come into the town that had stalls in the street as well as livestock. People sold clothes and various other stuff was on show, you know. And the town usually was packed. And restaurants, bars and all done a roaring trade on the fair day.
What sort of entertainment was there?
I have seen them, you know, as the day went on, maybe some of them got a wee bit tipsy, but there was maybe a wee bit of dancing in the evenings there, yes. And singing, yes, I remember singing on the street, yeah.
Like the rest of Fermanagh, Tempo is famous for its fishing, and people come from far and wide to try their hand with rod and line. Someone they're more than likely to catch is Frankie McPhillips, a keen fisherman who makes his living from tying and selling flies. As well as supplying the local market, he exports to the continent, the US and the Far East.
Fly tying now, I'd say it's on the increase in Ireland. A lot more people are taking it up, and a lot of fishermen are now taking up fly tying as a hobby, and they love to tie their own flies and catch a fish on their own flies. And it's a huge, I mean, it's a huge business, and it's a worldwide business now. I mean, it's fly tying. I found in the last few years, loads of people now tie in Europe and the States, and the Japanese are into fly tying in a huge way.
Because fishing is supposed to be actually the #1 hobby in the British Isles, as far as I know. And I find it extraordinary because you don't sort of fall over fishermen every day, but a lot of people are doing it, aren't they?
Yeah, well, as I say, it's on the increase. Even since I would have started in 1978 in my business, I could find a huge increase in people who are taking up fly fishing as a hobby.
As opposed to?
As opposed to coarse fishing and spinning, you know, which are just other methods.
Right, right. Have you tried the others?
I have. I started off, I suppose, as a worm fisherman, and then spinning, and then graduated to fly fishing.
So what's the attraction of fly fishing as against the other two?
Well, I think fly fishing is a more sporting method of catching the trout, because number one, you're trying to imitate the trout's food, i.e. in the form of a fly. So it's I think it's a more cunning way to fish, and it's probably the purest form of fishing.
Well, those were the sights and the sounds of tempo. It certainly got rhythm and rhymes, and I think a note of optimism. You know, at the beginning of this series, I said it wasn't about travel, it was about people, but in tempo you've got both, and you could do worse than spend a few days here. I hope I'll come back someday. Meanwhile, I'm back on the road again. Next week, I'm in Brownlow at Craigavon. That'll be different. See you then.
And there are voices calling from miles apart, from our places apart, places apart, places
We haven't had foot-and-mouth disease since 1941. All movement will stop in a 10-kilometre area. The European community would stop us exporting. The effect is absolutely devastating.
Now on BBC One, Maurice Todd focuses on the seashore at Ballantoy.